The first mortar hit the school building at exactly noon, and the screaming started 3 seconds later. Corporal Danny Hale dropped flat behind a broken wall as dust and fire erupted across the street. His squad was pinned along the eastern edge of Alara, a Finhari city that had been beautiful once. Now it was just rubble and smoke and the distant thunder of Rosk artillery walking its way through civilian districts like a butcher working through meat. Danny pressed his back against the wall and checked his rifle. His hands were steady. They were always steady. That was the thing about Danny. He never shook, not even when the world was ending around him. His squad leader, Lieutenant Priya Nair, was shouting orders through the comms, pulling the team tighter around the mineral extraction zone they had been sent to secure. Not the city, not the people, the dirt beneath the city. That was what Earth wanted. The orders had been painfully clear during the briefing. Secure the corridor. Avoid local populations. Do not render aid to Finhari civilians. The Finhari were not Earth's problem. They were just the unfortunate species that happened to live on top of the most valuable mineral deposit in 3-star systems. Danny watched a column of Finhari refugees stumble through the wreckage across the road. They were small, gray-skinned, with large dark eyes that seemed too big for their narrow faces. They moved in silence, carrying bundles and children, their skin flickering with faint light. Bioluminescence, the briefing had said. It meant something in their language. Danny did not know what. A Rosk bomber screamed overhead. The explosion hit 2 blocks north, and the ground bucked hard enough to crack Danny's teeth together. More dust. More screaming. He could hear Priya calling for a head count, and he responded automatically, his voice flat and professional while his eyes tracked the chaos across the street. That was when he saw the child. She was small, maybe 6 years old by human standards, pinned under a collapsed doorframe at the edge of the blast zone. Gray skin covered in dust, golden eyes wide and blinking, one thin arm reaching out from the rubble. She was not crying. She was too scared to cry. Her skin was pulsing a rapid, desperate red. Danny's body moved before his brain gave permission. He was up and over the wall and sprinting across open ground before Priya's shout even registered in his earpiece. He heard her yelling his name. He heard someone else cursing. He did not stop. He reached the child in 8 seconds. The doorframe was heavy, but not impossible. He braced his legs and heaved, and the broken wood and stone shifted enough for him to drag her free. She was light, terrifyingly light, like holding a bird. He pulled her against his chest and turned to run back. The secondary explosion caught him from behind. The plasma burst punched through his back armor like it was paper. He felt the heat before the pain, a white-hot line that carved across his shoulder and down his spine. His legs buckled. He went down hard on his knees, but he did not drop the child. His arms locked around her, and he curled his body over hers, making himself a wall between her and the fire. The world went white and loud, and then very, very quiet. He was still conscious when his squad reached him. Priya was above him, her face tight with controlled fear, shouting for the medic. Danny could feel blood running down his back in a warm sheet. His left hand was numb, completely numb, from the wrist down, like it belonged to someone else. But the child was alive beneath him, her small body trembling, her skin pulsing a faint, shaky gold against his chest. They dragged him back to the forward operating base on a stretcher. The medics cut away his armor, and Danny heard the sharp intake of breath that told him the wound was bad. Plasma burns along the shoulder blade. Nerve damage in the spine. His left hand was not responding to stimulus. They pumped him full of stabilizers and told him to stay still. Rida, he did not know her name yet, would not learn it for days, was placed on a cot beside him. She had not let go of his arm during the entire extraction. Every time someone tried to move her, she stopped breathing. Literally stopped. Her bioluminescence would flare into panicked red, and her small chest would freeze until they brought her back to Danny's side. The medics gave up after the 3rd attempt. Word reached General Marin Soloway within the hour. A soldier had broken protocol. A soldier had risked his life and compromised unit position to rescue an alien child from a population they had been explicitly ordered to ignore. Soloway's response came down the chain in 4 words. Confine the soldier, return the child. Priya received the order. She read it twice. Then she set down her datapad and walked to the medical tent where Danny lay on his back with a Finhari child sleeping against his wounded arm, her skin glowing a soft and steady gold that lit up the dim canvas like a small sun. Priya told the medics the transfer paperwork had a processing delay. 24 hours, minimum. Bureaucratic error. These things happened. Then she sat down outside the tent and did not move. Danny stared at the canvas ceiling above him. His back was a landscape of fire. His left hand was dead weight. Somewhere outside, Rosk artillery was still pounding Alara flat, and 17,000 Fenri civilians were running out of places to hide. Earth's army was here for the minerals. Not for them. Never for them. The child shifted in her sleep and pressed closer to his side. Her glow warmed his skin through the bandages. Danny closed his eyes and breathed. 3 days after the blast, Danny woke to a dead hand and a golden glow. His left hand lay on the cot beside him like a piece of equipment that had been disconnected. He could see it. He could tell his brain to move it. But the fingers just sat there, curled slightly inward, answering to nothing. The medics had explained it in careful, clinical terms: plasma damage to the spinal nerves, possible permanent loss of motor function in the left extremity. They said possible, but their eyes said probable. Rita was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside his cot. Her gray skin was dim in the low light of the medical tent, but a faint golden glow pulsed steadily along her arms and neck, like a heartbeat made visible. She was watching him with those enormous eyes, still and patient, the way a small animal watches the one creature in the world it has decided to trust. Danny had learned a few things about her in those 3 days. She did not speak any human language. She did not speak at all, at least not with sound. Her people communicated through their bioluminescence, the glow patterns that rippled across their skin in shifting colors. Gold meant calm. Blue meant curiosity. Red meant fear. Danny had figured this out by watching her react to the world around her. When the medics approached gently, she glowed blue. When the artillery rumbled outside, she flashed red. When Danny spoke to her, even though she could not understand the words, she settled into a deep, steady gold. He shared his rations with her. The Fenri could eat human food, though they seemed to prefer softer things. She liked the protein paste, which Danny considered a miracle because every human in the base hated it. He would squeeze a bit onto his finger and hold it out, and she would take it carefully with both hands, eating slowly while her skin pulsed with quiet blues and golds. It was on the 3rd morning that Priya came to see him with a face that meant trouble. She sat on the supply crate beside his cot and kept her voice low. Soloway was not just angry, she said. The general viewed Danny's actions as a direct challenge to the non-interference doctrine. A human soldier publicly bonded to a Fenri child while Earth's official position was that the Fenri were not their concern. It was a political disaster waiting to happen. The story was already spreading through the ranks. Some soldiers thought Danny was a hero. Others thought he was a fool who had thrown away his body for an alien kid. Opinions were splitting hard, and Soloway did not like splits. Danny asked what the general wanted. Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she said that Soloway wanted the child removed and Danny shipped to a rear medical facility where the story could die quietly. Out of sight, out of mind. The official narrative would be that Danny was wounded during approved operations and the child was returned to her people. Clean. Simple. Done. Danny looked at Rita. She was watching Priya with cautious blue light moving across her face. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Children always understood tone. He asked Priya how much time they had. Priya said the transport window was in 48 hours. Soloway was pulling every Earth unit back from Alara. Full withdrawal to secondary positions 200 kilometers away. The mineral corridor was getting too hot. The Rosk were pushing harder every day, and Command had decided the resources were not worth the losses. Not yet. Danny processed this slowly. Withdrawal meant the entire city would be left open. 17,000 Fenri civilians with nowhere to go and a Rosk army that had already demonstrated it did not care about the difference between soldiers and children. He asked Priya what would happen to the Fenri. She did not answer. She did not need to. That evening, Danny sat up in his cot for the first time. The pain was extraordinary. His back felt like someone had laid hot iron across it and left it there. But he got upright, and he stayed upright, breathing through his teeth until the worst of it passed. Rita stood immediately when he moved, her small hands reaching for his arm, her skin flaring with worried amber light. He placed his right hand, the one that still worked, on top of her head. Her skin was smooth and cool, and faintly warm where the glow pulsed. She looked up at him, and the amber slowly faded back to gold. Outside the tent, Danny could hear the camp preparing for withdrawal. Vehicles being loaded, equipment being packed, the sound of an army getting ready to leave. Beyond that, the distant crump of Rosk shells still falling on Alara. Each one was a clock ticking. He tried to move his left hand again. One finger twitched. Just one, just barely. It was the smallest possible victory, but he watched that finger move, and something hard and quiet settled in his chest. Priya had told him the timeline. 48 hours. After that, Soloway would have him arrested, the child removed, and every Fenhari in Alara left to die under Ross guns while Earth's army sat in comfortable positions 200 kilometers away, guarding an empty mineral corridor that no one was even mining anymore. Rida climbed onto the cot beside him and curled against his side. She was small enough that she barely took up any space. Her glow dimmed to a sleepy, trusting gold, and within minutes she was asleep, one tiny hand wrapped around his dead fingers as if she could hold them back to life. Danny sat in the dark and listened to the artillery and the withdrawal preparations and the soft breathing of a child who had decided he was safe. He did not sleep that night, but by the time the sun came up over the burning city, he knew exactly what he was going to do. General Soloway's office was a shipping container with a desk bolted to the floor and a map of Alara pinned to the wall behind her. Half the map was covered in red markers, Ross positions that had doubled in the last week. She did not stand when Danny entered. She did not need to. The room was small enough that her rank filled every corner of it. Danny had dressed in a clean uniform for the meeting. It had taken him 20 minutes to get the shirt on with one working hand. He stood as straight as his burned back allowed and looked the general in the eye. Soloway studied him the way a surgeon studies an X-ray, looking for the fracture, the weakness, the point where pressure would make things snap. She was a small woman with gray hair cut short and eyes that gave nothing away. She had commanded 3 campaigns across 2-star systems and had never lost a battle she intended to win. She also had never been accused of caring about anything that did not appear on a mission briefing. She told Danny his actions were a violation of direct orders and had created a diplomatic complication. Earth's position on Fenhar was resource security, not humanitarian intervention. His rescue of the alien child had been recorded by multiple helmet cameras and was now circulating through the battalion. Some soldiers were calling him a hero. That was, in Soloway's view, worse than if they had called him a coward. Heroes inspired imitation. An imitation of Danny's behavior would compromise the entire withdrawal operation. Danny listened without interrupting. When she finished, he did not apologize. Instead, he asked permission to speak freely. Soloway's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Danny laid out his argument in plain, simple terms. The Fenhari underground tunnel network beneath Alara extended for nearly 60 kilometers in every direction. It was the most extensive subterranean infrastructure on the planet. If Earth ever needed to return to the mineral corridor, and they would, because the minerals were not going anywhere and neither was the demand, they would need local cooperation. The Fenhari knew those tunnels. Earth did not. Abandoning the Fenhari population to Rosk slaughter did not just kill civilians. It killed any future chance of partnership. It turned a potential ally into an enemy, or worse, into a ghost. Dead people could not cooperate. Soloway listened. Her face did not change. When Danny finished, she leaned back in her chair and told him what was going to happen. His injuries would be classified as sustained during approved operations, full medical benefits, pension, honors, if he complied. He would hand over the child, board the medical transport, and allow the story to fade. If he did not comply, his injuries would be reclassified as the result of unauthorized action. No benefits, no pension, no coverage for the nerve damage in his hand. A formal charge of insubordination. And the child would be removed anyway. She said this without anger, without cruelty. She said it the way a person reads a weather report, just facts, just conditions, just the way things were going to be. Danny asked about the Fenhari civilians. Soloway told him that the Fenhari civilians were not in her operational mandate. The withdrawal order stood. All Earth forces would pull back to secondary positions within 48 hours. What happened to Alara after that was not Earth's responsibility. Danny stood there for a long moment. His back ached. His dead hand hung at his side. Outside the container, he could hear the camp breaking down. Engines warming, cargo being loaded, the organized chaos of an army in retreat. He asked one more question. He asked if Soloway had watched the footage from the bombing run. The footage that showed the Finhari child pinned under rubble while Earth soldiers walked past her. Soloway's jaw tightened. Just slightly, just for a moment. Then it relaxed and her face was smooth again. She told Danny he had until morning. Then the child would be transferred and he would be on the transport. That was final. Danny saluted with his right hand. He turned and walked out. The walk back to the medical tent took longer than it should have. His leg was stiffening where the burns ran down his lower back, and every step sent a sharp wire of pain up his spine. Soldiers passed him without making eye contact. Word had spread. Everyone knew about the meeting. Everyone was waiting to see what Danny would do. Rida was asleep on his cot when he returned. Someone had given her a blanket, one of the thin military-issue ones, olive green and rough. She had pulled it around herself like a cocoon, and her skin was glowing that soft, steady gold that Danny had come to recognize as her version of peace. She did not know that in 12 hours she would be taken from the only person on this planet who had reached into the fire for her. She did not know that 17,000 of her people had been weighed against a mineral corridor and found lighter. Danny sat down on the edge of the cot. He looked at his right hand. It was scarred and calloused, and it worked. He looked at his left hand. It hung there, still and quiet, a reminder of what it had cost to do one decent thing in a war full of calculations. He sat there through the night. He watched Rida breathe. He listened to the camp emptying around him, vehicle by vehicle, crate by crate, the entire weight of Earth's military machine grinding itself into motion to leave. And somewhere in the deepest hours of that night, between one breath and the next, Danny stopped weighing the costs. He flexed his right hand, the one that worked, and made a fist. By morning, his decision was made. Priya found Danny packing a medical kit with one hand at 0500 hours, and she knew immediately. She did not ask him to explain. She did not argue. She stood in the entrance of the medical tent and watched him stuff bandages and painkillers and water purification tablets into a field bag using only his right hand, his left arm hanging useless at his side, and she understood everything without a single word being spoken. She asked him one question. She asked him if he had a plan. Danny said he did. The Finhari tunnels. 60 kilometers of underground passages beneath Alara, deep enough to survive Ross bombardment, wide enough to shelter thousands. If someone could coordinate the evacuation and organize defensive positions at the tunnel entrances, the Finhari could survive underground until the Rosk moved on or until someone came back for them. It was not a good plan. It was barely a plan at all. But it was more than zero, and zero was what Soloway was offering. Priya was quiet for a long time. Then she pulled her unit patch off her shoulder and set it on the cot. Danny told her she did not have to do this. She told him to shut up. By 0600, there were 17 of them. Danny did not recruit a single one. They came on their own, one by one and in pairs, slipping into the medical tent and removing their patches and setting them in a growing pile on the empty cot. Riflemen, engineers, 2 medics, a communications specialist who brought her entire signal kit. They came because they had watched the footage. They came because they had seen the Finhari children running through the rubble. They came because there was a line inside each of them that Soloway's withdrawal order had finally crossed. Priya organized them with brutal efficiency. Weapons check. Supply count. Medical inventory. They had enough ammunition for maybe 6 hours of sustained combat. Enough food for 3 days. Enough medical supplies to handle moderate casualties for 48 hours. After that, they would be running on nothing. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough. But they shouldered their packs anyway. General Soloway learned of the mutiny at 0630. Her aide delivered the report and then took 2 steps back, because even experienced officers knew when to create distance from Soloway's anger. 18 soldiers, including a lieutenant, had removed their unit designations and declared their intention to remain in Alara. They were requesting, not asking, but requesting, to be classified as volunteer detachment rather than deserters. Soloway denied the request. She branded them deserters, effective immediately, but she did not send the military police. She could not arrest 18 soldiers without creating a scene that would spread through the entire division, and her withdrawal timeline was already tight. She ordered the convoy to move without them. Let the deserters play hero. Finhar would bury them soon enough. The convoy rolled out at 0800. Danny watched the last vehicles disappear into the dust from the edge of Alara's shattered eastern district. Beside him, Rita stood on a pile of broken concrete, her golden eyes tracking the departing army with an expression that was too old for her small face. Her skin glowed a steady, cautious blue. Danny turned toward the city. Finding Overseer Dalrimac took 2 hours. The Finhari elder was in what remained of the central government building, surrounded by frightened officials and a handful of Finhari guards armed with weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. Dalrimac was tall for a Finhari, with darker gray skin and deep lines around his enormous eyes. He looked like a man who had been carrying something too heavy for too long. When Danny's group walked in, the room went silent. The Finhari guards raised their weapons. Dalrimac held up one thin hand, and they stopped. Danny spoke plainly. He told the overseer that Earth's army had left, that the Rosk were coming, that he and his volunteers were staying to help evacuate Finhari civilians into the tunnel network and hold the entrances long enough for the evacuation to succeed. He laid out the plan: choke points at the 3 primary tunnel entrances, rotating defensive positions, civilian flow managed through the secondary passages. Simple, desperate, honest. Dalrimac stared at Danny for a long time. His bioluminescence was almost invisible, a faint, guarded gray that gave nothing away. He said something in Finhari that Danny could not understand, and one of the officials translated in halting English. The overseer wanted to know why. Human armies had come to Finhar for the minerals. They had watched Finhari die without lifting a finger. They had packed their machines and left when the cost grew too high. Why would these humans stay when their own kind had abandoned them? Danny did not have a speech prepared. He was not good at speeches. He looked at Dalrimac and said that he did not have a good answer. He said that sometimes people did the right thing too late and for reasons they could not fully explain. He said that his people had a saying, that you find out who someone is not when things are easy, but when everything falls apart. Things had fallen apart, and he was still here. Dalrimac's expression did not change. His glow remained that flat, guarded gray. Then Rita stepped forward. She walked away from Danny's side and crossed the room, her bare feet silent on the broken floor. She reached up and took Dalrimac's hand. Her skin blazed a deep, brilliant blue, the brightest Danny had ever seen, and she held the elder's gaze with those enormous golden eyes. Dalrimac looked down at the child. He looked at her hand in his. He looked at the glow on her skin, and something shifted behind his ancient, tired eyes. He looked at Danny and nodded once. The tunnels were open. The Rosk came with the evening, and they came heavy. Danny heard them before he saw them. The deep mechanical grinding of armored transports rolling through the destroyed northern districts, the sharp crack of scout rifles testing the perimeter, the low vibrating hum of their energy shields that made the air taste like copper. The Rosk Dominion did not do subtlety. They did not need to. They had numbers and firepower and the absolute certainty that nothing in Alara could stop them. Danny was positioned at the primary tunnel entrance, a wide archway carved into the bedrock beneath the old market district. The arch was ancient, decorated with Finhari symbols that glowed faintly in patterns Danny could not read. Behind him, the tunnel dropped steeply into darkness. Through that darkness, a river of Finhari civilians was flowing. Thousands of them, moving in silence, carrying their children and their wounded and whatever they could hold. The glow of their skin lit the passage in shifting waves of amber and blue, a living current of light pouring into the earth. Priya held the western entrance with 6 soldiers and a pair of Finhari volunteers. Sergeant Cole, a quiet rifleman from Danny's original squad who had removed his patch without saying a word, held the eastern entrance with 5 more. Danny had the primary arch with the remaining soldiers, including the 2 medics and the communications specialist, Ava, who had rigged her signal kit to monitor Rosk frequencies. The first assault hit the western entrance at 1847 hours. Danny heard it through the comms. The rapid stutter of human rifles answered by the heavier punch of Rosk energy weapons. Priya's voice was calm and controlled as she called positions and targets, but Danny could hear the strain underneath. The Rosk were probing, testing the defenses, trying to find the soft points. They found one at the western entrance within 20 minutes. 2 of Priya's soldiers went down, 1 dead, 1 with a shattered leg. She pulled the line back 10 meters and held. The primary arch came under fire at 1920. Danny directed the defense from just inside the tunnel mouth, using a collapsed wall as cover. His left arm was strapped to his chest to keep it from hanging loose. He held his rifle one-handed and fired in controlled bursts, placing shots where they would slow the Rosk advance rather than stop it. Stopping them was not the point. Buying time was the point. Every minute the entrances held was another 100 civilians reaching safety in the deep tunnels. The Rosk pushed hard. They sent armored infantry in waves, each wave heavier than the last. Danny's people fired until their barrels glowed, fell back, set improvised charges in doorways and corridors, fell back again. The noise was constant, a wall of sound that erased thought and left only instinct. At 20:30, the eastern entrance fell. Cole's position was overrun when a Rosk heavy unit blasted through the barricade. Cole and 2 others made it into the tunnels. The rest did not. Danny ordered the eastern passage collapsed using the last of their demolition charges. The explosion sealed it shut and buried the Rosk advance under 30 tons of rock. 2 entrances left. Danny took shrapnel to his right leg at 21:15. A Rosk grenade bounced off the archway and detonated 6 meters from his position. Metal fragments tore through his calf, and he went down hard, his rifle clattering away. One of the medics dragged him back and wrapped the leg while Danny gritted his teeth and kept issuing orders through the comms. He could not walk. He could not hold a rifle steady. But he could think, and right now thinking was the only weapon that mattered. Rita was in the tunnel behind him. He had ordered her to go deep with the other civilians, but she had refused in the only way she could, by sitting down 10 meters inside the passage and not moving. Her skin was blazing gold, brighter than Danny had ever seen it, a warm and steady light that cut through the darkness of the tunnel like a beacon. Every Finhari who passed her saw that glow and moved faster, calmer, pulled forward by the living signal that said the way was safe. Someone was still holding the line. At 2200, Dalrimac appeared at Danny's side. The old Finhari was carrying a weapon, one of the ancient rifles from the government building, and his skin was pulsing a deep, determined violet that Danny had never seen before. The overseer did not ask permission. He took a position beside the barricade and began firing at the Rosk with a precision that surprised everyone. Between reloads, Dalrimac spoke to Danny through the translator. He said that in 1,000 years of Finhari history, many alien species had come to their world. Some had traded. Some had conquered. Some had made promises and broken them. None, not one in 1,000 years, had ever bled for the Finhari. Danny, propped against the tunnel wall with blood soaking through the bandage on his leg, said that where he came from, you did not get to choose which children were worth saving. Dalrimac looked at him. His violet glow softened to something warmer. The Rosk breached the outer perimeter at 22:45. They were inside the market district, 50 meters from the arch. Danny could see their energy shields flickering in the dust. Behind him, the last of the civilian column was disappearing into the deep tunnels. Ava confirmed on comms. Evacuation was complete. 11,000 Finhari were underground. Danny gave the order. The charges detonated. The archway collapsed. Stone and earth and 1,000 years of Finhari architecture came down in a roar that swallowed everything, sealing the tunnel entrance and burying the Rosk advance under a mountain of rubble. The silence that followed was absolute. Danny lay in the darkness, bleeding, barely conscious, sealed underground with his volunteers and 11,000 Finhari and a child whose golden glow was the only light left in the world. 12 hours underground, and the air was starting to taste thin. Danny could feel it in the way each breath came a little shorter than the last, a little less satisfying, like drinking water that had been watered down. The tunnel was dark except for the bioluminescence of 11,000 Finhari bodies, a soft, shifting ocean of amber and blue that stretched back into the passage as far as he could see. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest hurt, though that might have been the oxygen. He was propped against the tunnel wall near the collapsed entrance. His leg had stopped bleeding, which was either good news or very bad news depending on what was happening inside the bandage. His left arm was still dead. His back was a single continuous sheet of pain that had become so constant it was almost boring. Rita was pressed against his right side, her small body warm, her glow dimmed to a faint amber that flickered with each breath like a candle running out of wax. Priya was keeping everyone alive through sheer force of will. She had organized the survivors into groups, rationed the remaining water, posted guards at both ends of the occupied section, and set up a rotation system so that people near the walls could trade positions with people in the center where the air was slightly better. She moved through the tunnel like a machine, checking on everyone, adjusting everything, refusing to stop. Danny watched her and thought that if they got out of this, Priya deserved every medal the military had ever invented and a few that had not been invented yet. Hours passed. The air grew thinner. Fenhari children began to cry, not loud, but in soft, whimpering sounds that echoed through the dark. Dal Rimac sat among his people and spoke to them in low, rolling Fenhari, his bioluminescence a calm and steady blue that seemed to ease the fear around him. Danny could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. The old leader was telling them to hold on, to breathe slowly, to wait. Danny was drifting in and out when he felt it. A vibration, deep and low, coming through the rock beneath him. Not the sharp crack of Rosk artillery. He knew that rhythm too well. This was different. Heavier. Sustained. Mechanical. It pulsed through the stone like a second heartbeat. He opened his eyes. Rida was awake, her skin suddenly brighter, shifting from amber to gold. She pressed her hand flat against the tunnel floor and looked at Danny with wide, questioning eyes. Danny listened. The vibration grew stronger. Dust began to fall from the ceiling. Small stones rattled loose and bounced off the floor. The Fenhari around them stirred, their glow patterns flashing with nervous reds and uncertain yellows. Then the ceiling cracked. A line of white light split the darkness above them, thin at first, then widening as rock and earth fell away in chunks. The sound was enormous, grinding, drilling, the high-pitched scream of industrial cutting tools chewing through stone. Danny threw his good arm over Rida and pressed them both against the wall as debris rained down. The light broke through, bright, harsh, artificial. Danny squinted up through the dust and saw the silhouette of an Earth military drilling rig, the big kind, the kind they used for deep mineral extraction. Behind it, through the widening hole in the ceiling, he could see the gray sky of Fenhar and the shapes of soldiers. Dozens of them, hundreds, moving with purpose, shouting orders, lowering ropes and ladders into the breach. And standing at the edge of the opening, looking down into the tunnel with an expression that contained no emotion at all, was General Marin Soloway. Danny stared up at her. She stared down at him. What he learned later, in pieces and fragments from Priya and Ava, and eventually from official reports, was this. Sergeant Cole's helmet camera had survived the eastern entrance collapse. The footage, 17 minutes of a wounded human medic directing the defense of an alien city while his own army retreated, had transmitted to the battalion relay before the tunnels were sealed. It reached Earth Command within 2 hours. It reached the public within 3. The response was instantaneous. Millions of people on Earth watched a one-handed soldier bleeding in a tunnel while alien children streamed past him into the dark. They watched him take shrapnel and keep fighting. They watched a 6-year-old alien girl sit in a collapsing war zone and glow like a small golden star because she would not leave his side. Earth's parliament held an emergency session. The vote was overwhelming. The Fenhar operation was reclassified from resource security to humanitarian protection. Additional battalions were redeployed, and General Soloway, who had ordered the withdrawal that left 17,000 civilians to die, was commanded to return with the full weight of the 9th Division and defend Alara. She executed the order without a word. The Rosk, facing 3 full Earth battalions instead of 18 deserters, withdrew from Alara within a day. In the aftermath, Danny was carried out on a stretcher. His left hand would never fully recover. The nerve damage stabilized, but the fingers would always be slow and clumsy. A permanent souvenir of the day he reached into a fire for someone else's child. His leg healed, his back scarred. Rida was reunited with her surviving family, an aunt and 2 older cousins who had made it into the tunnels during the evacuation. When Danny was loaded onto the medical transport, she broke away from them and ran to him. She pressed her forehead against his open palm, and her skin blazed the brightest gold he had ever seen, so bright it hurt to look at, so warm it burned through his bandages. Dalrimac came last. The old Fenhari placed both hands on Danny's temples and held them there. Then he spoke one sentence in broken human language that he had clearly been practicing for hours. You stayed. Danny closed his eyes and let the words settle. The transport lifted off. He watched Alara shrink below him through the window, still broken, still burning in places, but lit from within by thousands of Finhuri glowing in the streets. Alive. All of them alive. He looked down at his scarred left hand. He tried to move the fingers. 3 of them responded, slow, stiff, reluctant, but there. He closed them into something that was almost a fist. It was enough.